I didn't do the opening. Hi, welcome everyone. My name's Aida Farhat, and I have Penny Bradley as my guest tonight, and I'm excited to have you. It's been, I don't know, several years we've been friends on Facebook. I do want to add the opening because I think it's important, and I'm learning StreamYard, guys. So if you could just be a little patient with me, I would appreciate it. But this intro is important. Here we go. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. That will set the tone. We got a little music going on, and welcome everybody. I know people are probably very excited to hear what you have to say tonight about the Annunaki. I am going to read your bio for those that are not familiar with your work and your background. So Penny Bradley was kidnapped at the age of 4 and taken to Langley Air Force Base in 1959 by men in green fatigues. After 5 years of mind fracture and alter training, she was sent to Aries Prima on Mars through the Long Island jumpgate and was turned over to the Germans. As a 9-year-old, the Germans put her in school.
Schule.
Schule. Okay, I wasn't sure if that was a.
It's a German word.
Okay. Schule for a decade. When she graduated, she was a pilot in the German Mars Militia called Marsische
Heimschild.
Okay, until 1990. She panicked during a mission and was sent off Mars to the German space military called Nacht Waffen. She was a navigator on a freighter in service to the Draco for another 25 years and was sent home in 2014 back to 1959. The NSA Russian desk deliberately activated her for her first alter in 2013. The memories were in a lump with the traumatic stuff on top, and it was all in German. She has spent 3 years figuring out what she was remembering before she went public. Penny has a total of 22,000 alters. She is still working on. I'm sorry?
2,200.
2,200. I apologize. Still working on regeneration.
Not enough.
Yeah. I didn't mean to make it more than that. Sometimes my reading is a little off here. She's still working on regeneration and its memories. What she remembered was verified as matching her file by Doris Neely, CIA
archivist.
I knew that word, and by Peter the Insider. Okay. Very good. And you'll have time to elaborate. Welcome, Penny Bradley. It is an honor to have you on my show, Cosmic Brew podcast. So if you want to just share a little bit more about what your bio and maybe give the listeners a little bit more background on your experiences, that'd be great. And then we can move into the topic tonight.
Okay. When Eisenhower was elected president, he was immediately slapped with a pending treaty that President Truman had refused to sign. And it was a treaty with the Germans in Antarctica. Now, Eisenhower had been the main American general during World War II. He knew that Germany, the country, had surrendered. He didn't know that the Germans in Antarctica were operating as a separate entity and that they had done the Great Washington Flap during the election. So, first thing when he was sworn into office, he was hit with this. And it changed his complete worldview. Now, I personally consider Eisenhower to have been a basically decent person and that he was in over his head with this information. Okay, that there was a separatist German group that had actually won the Battle of Operation High Jump, and that they were presenting terms to us, and that Truman had refused to sign it. But there were a lot of changes involved. Okay. One of the things that I don't know, I haven't seen the whole treaty, so I don't know all the details. I've I've had parts explained to me. Okay. We Americans were allowed the illusion that we were still a republic.
Mm.
But the folks running the Trilateral Commission, right, and they have a website so people can find them and just look up Trilateral Commission. Their director is the liaison between the Germans that are now in space and the American government. That was originally Nelson Rockefeller, who was Ike's vice president at the time. Um, Ike basically had gone through this war, had seen all this stuff, had beaten the Germans, he thought, and then got into office and found out he hadn't. This was a major big deal to him. Then he found out ET is real, and that there were various groups of ETs, not just one, that some were physical and some were interdimensional. And then there were other folks out there that are basically what most religions call demons, and they were real too. And he realized that this information, if it ever got out, would destroy religion as we know it. And so he made it top secret because he didn't want to destroy our cultural structure. And they have killed people over the decades to protect this. So it's not like it's something that they didn't take serious. This was higher classification level than the H bomb or the atomic bombs during World War II. This was something, if you let it leak, you died. Now, I'm operating 65, 87, almost 70 years later. And enough stuff has leaked over the remaining decades that most of the population has a pretty clear idea that we're not alone in the universe. And they're still religious anyway, which is something.
I'm sorry, say that again. They're still what? Religious anyway?
They're still religious anyway.
Yeah, sure.
And so it's very hardwired into our psyche to believe in a higher power and to be obedient and loyal to that higher power, even if we have to change how we think of them. Okay, I thought I was just a misfit all those years. I had flashbacks. I would wake up the neighbors screaming at night. Even if their house was a couple of miles away, I would wake up the neighbors screaming at night. But the flashbacks could not possibly have been on Earth, at least not the Earth I interact with on a daily basis. So it took me a lot of dealing with the situation. And then one day I was trying to get off antidepressants. And I was talking to a Facebook friend, and he says, "Yeah, I'll be your support person while you get off them." Um, and it takes 6 weeks to get off them, and it's kind of a roller coaster. And I had no support from my doctor. He was like, "Well, don't you want to be happy?" And I'm like, "I'm sorry, they just make me numb. They don't make me happy." And at that point, I was going blind from the drugs. So that's why I always wear reading glasses, guys, is because I was on an antidepressant for almost 20 years, and it affected my vision. So I had my reasons to want to be off it. And this guy turned out to be, he said he was retired, but he wasn't. He said he was a Russian translator, but he was obviously a agent with other assignments, because he used my remember code over and over and over and over until I finally remembered.
Hmm.
And
I think I remember hearing you mention about this guy in other interviews. Yeah. Go ahead,
yeah,
please continue. Yeah.
this was in 2013. And after I went public in 2016, I had been shot at with energy weapons. I My partner Lou had been shot at with energy weapons. We figured we were going to be killed. And I remembered Bill Cooper had said, if you know you're going to be killed, sit in the spotlight, tell your story, so that when they do kill you, people know why you were killed.
Hmm.
You can't stop them from killing you. Everybody's vulnerable. But you can make it embarrassing for them to kill you. And Lou and I talked about it, and that's what we decided to do. And I went public in September of 2016. Well, that agent's boss was shot with one of those CIA pellet guns in October. He eventually died in April following. He left a young widow and a 5-year-old son. And the agent who activated me was killed. He had COPD, and he was in the hospital for a lung drain, and they popped his IV full of air,
Oh my
killed him
goodness.
that way. Um,
How did you find that out? How were you able to get that information to know that?
this is the woo part.
I can't help but giggle to myself when you say that. Please go ahead.
Okay, because that agent had used some Scandinavian magic on me to
Mm.
make me vulnerable, it left us with a soul connection.
Oh,
And
interesting.
so when he died, his soul was tied to me. He could not move forward because of that spell he had done. in a way, it was justice because he had been driving me crazy with it.
So were you able to release him and allow him to cross over without having to have that kind of connection? I mean, I would imagine
an
that's
entity came and assisted me.
okay. Yeah.
It was an orc. If you followed my story, I have talked in the past about how I met the orcs when I was at Montauk.
Hmm.
And there have been several of them who have maintained contact since. And one of them realized that this spell had been used and came in and basically rescued me because this agent was in my auric field and he was screaming, "I've died and gone to hell," because he was with me.
Hmm.
It was 4 months before I was released from that.
I'm so thankful that you were.
Oh, I am. I'd be in a nut house by now. You know,
Good for you, Penny. I
there
know
are
that you've been through so much, and I've always appreciated your courage to come forward and the information that you share. And you're quite an intelligent woman, and I appreciate that. So, yeah, I
the
mean,
woo part is real but not real. You know, it's not 3D physical. I have tried really hard to keep the majority of my testimony in the 3D physical realm.
mhm.
Okay. Our community here has a religion problem. And I'll just put it that way.
You're welcome to say whatever as
Half,
long as
half,
we're respectful and not, at
half
this.
of them are Christians and tend to call me a demon. The other half are New Age and they call me an Archon. And I'm just trying to describe what physically happened to me and thousands, if not millions, of others. Okay.
I've never heard anybody or read any. I mean, I don't know because I don't
Well,
go on all your groups.
I
Yeah,
delete those as
yeah.
soon as I see
I've
them.
never
I
seen
delete them.
anybody, and I probably would have some choice words if I saw somebody disrespecting you like that. I don't care for that.
There,
I
there
think
are currently about 40 people who have stated that they wish me dead. One man was blatant and put it in writing that he wanted to burn me alive. I reported him to the FBI.
good for you. People,
There are some really nasty folks out there, and almost all of them are what we used to call religiously insane.
hmm.
And so these folks have made me fear religion.
Can I ask you a question, Penny? Would you agree that religion is only a 3D concept, or uh, religion isn't part of the higher dimensional realities? It's only,
No, it's not.
yeah,
None of it. None of it. Not Christianity, not Judaism, not Islam, not New Age, not Buddhism, not any of it.
right. So these are programs that are playing out in the
Yeah,
3D.
these are all programs in 3D that are designed. My understanding of the Annunaki is that they were slave owners and we were their slaves.
Mhm.
And each Anunnaki gave his or her slaves a religion where he or she was God Almighty and the others either didn't exist or were demons. And this is the way all of these religions were worked out. Some of the beliefs are based in ethics because they didn't want their slaves killing each other.
Okay.
If they were doing these breeding programs, they only wanted you to have sex with who you were supposed to have sex for the breeding program. So they invented the concepts of adultery and betrayal and all that stuff. So all of our basic social structure, including the pecking orders, is all from them. It just, every sky god on earth is an Anunnaki. So why are all of our religions infighting? Because they were started by different Anunnaki.
Okay, well let's so if you don't mind, okay, so I know that you've had experiences with the Anunnaki. I personally have my own.
I
And
should probably state that my very physical experience with the Anunnaki was not pleasant. So people know that that is my bias. They convicted me in absentia, then they abducted me and put me into something that I heard them telepathically, so I heard it in English, not their language. Okay. They called it the truth machine. And it's designed for interrogating extraterrestrials. It kills humans. And that was their intention, was to strip off all of my altars until there was nothing left. And they called that forever death. There would be nothing left to reincarnate. Now, I still don't know what they think I did to deserve this, but they had stripped off 2 altars and were working on the 3rd when the Germans in space showed up and rescued me. And they lost a ship in the process. And I still do not understand why they thought I was worth losing a ship.
I recall hearing you speak. So I of course revisited some of your interviews the past few days so that I could refresh myself and have some pertinent questions for you so that the listeners. Yes. I mean, I have a general memory of your story and, some of the details, but not. So it was nice to re-listen actually, because you could listen to them probably 5 or 6 times and still learn something else, not in one go. Like it's intriguing and fascinating. And I'm glad you're here with us, Penny. And I've always held you in high regard and shared lots of love and support to you. And I hope you know that.
Yeah,
Because
I
it
do.
takes a courageous woman to come forward and share the information that you're sharing. And if people can't see that or have some kind of, whether they agree with you or not, if they can't just, come from a neutral place and just say, okay, this is the story this woman believes that she's experienced, and you have proof, whatever that is or not. I get it, because I've had my own experiences that I don't know how to prove to people. You can't do that. It's like it happens, and it's something between you and the being or source or creator, and people want proof of everything, and so
people have gone beyond what's evidence in court. They want a link online, and they don't even take photographs anymore because AI. They don't take video because Photoshop. There is so little that people actually accept anymore.
Well, I
that
think
it's
part of that
impossible to prove anything.
Yeah, part of that might be, and I don't mean to interrupt you. There's so many people that have come forward. I've been in this community, we'll call it that, since 2011 when I first had my Kundalini awakening. And I went through similar things like you. I've had energy weapons used on me. I've had gin in my home. House got broken into. Hair got cut out of my head. I was offered up as a sacrifice to Moloch. From the reptilian perspective, they believe I sacrificed myself. And the question is if that's true, why? Right? What's wrong?
I can't believe they think you offered yourself to Moloch.
No, right. So, well, I won't get into detail because this show's not about me, but I'm just,
No rational person would do that.
No. So therefore, and the only reason I shared what I just shared with you is just to give even, some more, I don't know if the word credence to your testimony. I get it because I've experienced a lot of my own stuff. And so therefore, I'm a little bit more open to hearing people's testimony because I know that I've experienced my own, right? But then you have those that come forward, and I won't mention names, but I've seen so many people come forward and, in less than 2 days, they have 100,000 followers, right? All of a sudden, and they have all this information and they have
that's a really bad sign if you're suddenly popular.
Well, I think that they're used as agents as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I'm not saying everything they say is not true. What I'm saying is that there is an agenda behind their presence and right.
There's a couple of folks in the community that they came out of nowhere and were suddenly popular, and they admit to being channelers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that bothers me because the folks that I generally interview are not channelers. They're people who believe that they experience these in 3D physical. Mm-hmm. And since those folks tend to be marginalized by this community because they're not as exciting.
Sure.
And we're actually more scary because if it can happen to us physically, it can happen to the audience. And that scares them. That's why they don't want to listen. And I understand that. Yeah, I get it. What I talk about is scary. But what I talk about is a program that's funded by Congress.
Sure. Are you talking about MK Ultra? I mean, we know that we had Bill Clinton come out and apologize to everybody for
exactly. Okay. I had a regression hypnosis. Now I knew I had reptilian in me somehow. Mm-hmm. Okay, I could feel it.
You mean an attack? Wait a minute. So we're clear for the audience, the people that are listening, because I do believe we have some people that are, and we have comments in here. I don't know. We'll run the too many or too judgmental in both communities. Okay. I'll get to, if anybody has questions for Penny, put it in all caps and I'll do my best to get the questions answered for you. At the end of the show, we're going to try and get through some more information, and I appreciate everybody tuning in. This is exciting. I'm so happy to have you, Penny, and to be back doing this because I really want to be a part of the solution. I want to engage and have conversations with people to share some solutions and helpful information for those that have been using these projects and programs where, we can come together as a community and knock off all the judgments of anybody. I mean, we're all trying to figure it out. I mean, and everybody has a piece. So
those of us who were used as super soldiers and as SSP, we're kind of a continuum. It's like the enlisted men were the super soldiers, the officers were the SSP. We have different attitudes because enlisted and officers do have different attitudes, but we're just like a continuum. And we are the folks who are the frontline soldiers. We man the ships. We go out and do the dirty work, setting up colonies and fighting any wars. Now, There are people out there who believe that we are completely and totally delusional, that none of this actually happened in 3D.
Mhm.
Okay, now I'm going with this is what I remember. This is truth to me.
Absolutely.
So I'm not going to let their worldview influence what I think is truth. I'm speaking what I know to be true in my life. I was physically kidnapped out of my bed when I was 4 years old, driven across the country because I grew up in California. Okay.
Mhm.
I was in California and they drove me to Langley, Virginia. And I spent 5 years there, except for 6 months they took me to Montauk in New York.
Mhm.
These are physical places.
Sure. I just visited Montauk with James Rink and a bunch of other people that were
Yeah,
used at
I,
Montauk.
I saw
Yeah.
you in the photos.
Yeah.
And these are physical places. And the other people who remember being these physical places also remember me. Well, they
Yeah.
don't from Langley because I'm the last one still alive. And that was from a DOD agent who tried to set me up to be killed. Oh, yeah, she called it the class of 64, like it was a school.
Yeah.
And so I'm the last of the 1,000 kids that were at Langley at that time. They picked us up in 59. In 64, they sent us to Mars.
Okay. So,
Because of that treaty
mhm.
that Eisenhower signed in 52 that said, among other things, that he would turn over 150,000 Americans to the Germans every year. That is in that treaty. In exchange for which Americans would be allowed to believe that they were still a republic and not a satellite state.
I've never read that. I do know there's discrepancy about, you know, Eisenhower and his decisions and how they have affected the American people and his
Mm-hmm.
connection to ET and so forth and so on. And
Well, he,
I'm neutral in it. I mean, I wasn't alive during that time, and I don't, you know, there's different
I was born
perspectives.
in 55.
Yeah,
So I've been looking through eyewitness testimony
sure.
and photographs.
Yeah.
That Eisenhower did meet with a ship at two different bases in California in 1956 or thereabouts. Um, Nobody ever recorded which ET they were. Um, there were meetings with tall whites that resulted in them being allowed a base in what's called Area 54 in Nevada.
Sure.
They they also have a base at Fort Knox
Mhm.
in Kentucky and a base in Pine Gap, Australia. They have they are the blue collar Annunaki, which is one of the things that feeds into our topic. They
That's what I wanna get into because I think that
okay.
people are probably eager to hear. Yeah. So
Okay, the
please go. Yeah.
Anunnaki were an alliance of several species
Okay.
from this part of the galaxy. It included the Alpha Draconians, it included the Jahami. Michael Lee Hill calls them Sams,
Okay.
same people. They are where the tall whites come from. The tall whites are their blue collar folks. There were Canids from Canis Minora. Um, Anubis is an example. There were avians. Horus is an example. There were Lyrans. Sekhmet is an example.
Interesting.
There were Taurans, the Minotaur of Crete, Moloch of Canaan. They were Taurans, and they looked like minotaurs, human bodies with a bull's head, and they eat meat. The one thing that all of these species had in common was they viewed us as food.
Sure.
And people forget that. Even the God of the Bible laid claim to the firstborn child. Or as Moses wrote it, that which opens the womb of man and beast. That's in the Bible.
What does that statement mean to you, Penny? Can you read? Can you? Okay, say that again, because
what they were doing, what they were practicing, was child sacrifice.
Sure, absolutely.
The firstborn child of man or beast belonged to God, so they were killed. Except Moses gives a way out of killing your children. You can redeem them by sacrificing an animal instead. And it's based on your income level, which animal you have to use. If you pay attention in the New Testament, you will find that Jesus's family sacrificed 2 turtle doves to redeem him. So it's part of the tradition, but people are glossing over it. They read the words, but they don't register that this is part of Earth's ancient religions. Now, everything we know about Annunaki up until Sitchin was based on...
I was going to ask you about Sitchin. I was going to ask you what because I watched Arizona Wilder's interview again with David Icke, who I've watched the interview several times, and she mentions that and Max Spears has also brought this up, that he is aware that Sitchin was involved in ceremony and sacrifice and ritual. I'm not a big fan of Sitchin. I'm not saying that
a lot of people are not.
Yeah, all the information that he shares isn't true, but I think that there was an agenda behind his.
Okay. When I dug through his stuff, I found, yes, he was Jewish. I found, yes, he was involved in secret societies. That he was accused of a lot of things with no proof. Okay. That, yes, he rented his office in a Rothschild building. That was as far as their connection went, as far as I could tell. Now, I wasn't going to talk about him as a person. I was going to talk about his work.
Okay.
He was the first person that I know of who tried to translate the Sumerian tablets into English. Now, the first person doing it is usually wrong on a lot of things. True?
Yes.
So, what he admitted to was when he couldn't understand what the Sumerian text said, he translated it into Hebrew first. And then he would use the Hebrew definition instead of the Sumerian one.
Interesting. I didn't realize that, but yes.
Okay. So a lot of his translations are actually Judaized.
Well, do you think, let me ask you this, Penny, do you think that so let's just say if testimony by Arizona Wilder, which I don't see why the woman would have any reason to come forward and share what she shared. If,
Well,
she
I'm
clearly said that he would get in the way of people that were interrupting what his plan was in these books and his writings, the information that he was wanting to share, that if they got in the way of what he was doing, that there was consequences. She didn't say it that way, but basically that's what she was saying in these rituals, the people that were involved and so forth. So
I had issues with what she said about my cousins, because I'm second cousin, twice removed from Charles, King of England.
okay.
I don't shapeshift. I don't. None of my birth family does.
Do you consider yourself reptilian? I mean,
No, we were Anunnaki. We were not. We were Anunnaki hybrids. We were not reptilian. I'm only reptilian because military laboratories shot me up with it.
Well, we all have reptilian DNA. I have a Pleiadian soul, but I also have AI that runs through my body. I was augmented, and I was.
But you hear what I'm saying?
Well, I do understand that.
That is my cousin, and I don't shapeshift. Why would I believe he does?
Well, fair enough. I mean, I respect that. I surely.
That's where I'm coming from. My eyes change colors based on my energy level.
Right, but if you don't have the DNA, or if you don't have enough of the genetics in order to be able to shapeshift, that may be why. I mean, if you're talking 2 generations back, you may not have the genetics.
My great-grandfather was the child of one of Queen Victoria's sons. Okay. Charles is the grandchild of a different one of Queen Victoria's sons. So going back 2 generations, 3 generations, we shared parents.
Okay.
So I don't shapeshift.
I mean, have you ever noticed your eyes slitting or going into a diamond shape or anything? Yeah. Because I see people shift in front of me all the time. I mean,
mine change color.
Yeah.
They start off green in the morning when I wake up, and they fade through the day to a gray when I go to bed.
Interesting.
But they don't change. Nothing changes shape.
Well, your pupil. It would be your pupil. I have a sister, and
I've been hearing that Queen Elizabeth turned into a lizard in her carriage, and I'm like, how? Wouldn't that hurt?
Yeah, well, it probably would hurt, but
why?
Some people are able to see these beings shift, or their hologram breaks down, and so you can see.
Well, I'm not on a hologram. You see what you get, Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm an overweight, disabled old lady.
Now you're a beautiful woman, Penny. You are. Look at your age. You got long, beautiful hair. You've got a lovely smile. You're always very polite and kind. And I know when you get in your little moods on there, when people are, being what I call spicy, you handle your business, and you don't allow it. And I respect that. So let's get on to the topic. Let's stick with the topic here. We are talking about, so I want to ask you a question. Okay, so this show is about the Annunaki, and those that are listening, thank you for joining us. Please share it out. Invite people. Please do subscribe, like, and share. I am hoping to reach as many hearts as I can with this platform, and bringing Penny on and other guests so that we could get information, which there are plenty of people out there doing it, but I'm Aida. They're not doing it the way I do it. And I'm bringing a lot of love and a lot of acceptance and appreciation for people like yourself, Penny, to come forward and share your story. So from a personal...
What I was aiming at was up to Sitchin.
Okay.
All we had was religion.
But this is what I'm trying to ask you.
It's in pieces here, there, everywhere. There were things in the temple texts in Egypt. There were things in the pyramid texts in Egypt. There were things in the things that were being dug up in the Middle East. But at that point, they could not read cuneiform, so they didn't know what they were saying. Cuneiform was something they eventually translated, and they started off with Babylonian and Akkadian and worked their way back to Sumerian. So we're getting to Sitchin, and Sitchin is one of the first to actually do the translations, and yeah, he may have screwed up some of them. Okay, I'm not saying he's 100% anything. I'm saying he's the first one who brought us something that wasn't religion.
I understand. I get that.
Now,
but this is what I wanted to ask you real quick.
We've got this translator from the Vatican who has since been defrocked, Mario Bagenio. I can't.
Is this the guy that goes on Paul Wallace's show?
I don't know who Paul Wallace is.
Okay.
But he started off translating Genesis in the Bible from Hebrew into Italian. It's now available in English, where he goes through and defines each word as you go. So you have all the meanings of the words, and they come in, and you put it together. And if you read it, it's the Elohim created us. The Elohim was the Hebrew word for Annunaki.
Interesting.
So he goes through and proves that the Anunnaki created us, and it's in our own Bible.
Well, I would like to respond to that for a minute because, well, I know the soul I behold, and I know exactly who I am, and I'm, about 3 or 4 lifetimes, and I would say that humans, that we understand 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, eyes, nose. Lyra is where the humans were originally, or the original Homo sapien, or not Homo sapien sapien, the original humanoids were Lyrans. Mm-hmm. And I would say that the Anunnaki, will use that word, as these beings that took strands of our DNA, hung them over our head, and restructured our biofield, our bodies.
That's not how I understand it. Yeah. What I understand is that there was an animal.
Hybridized, basically.
There was an animal that was already here. Paleontologists refer to it as Homo erectus.
Okay.
That was the Lyran descendant that was here. And the group of ETs that came decided that they needed a worker animal, so they mixed their own DNA with that Homo erectus and had several tries before they got us. And once they got us, Homo sapiens, they made a second layer that was more them than us. And that was the layer that they made the overseers, so that they didn't have to have constant contact with us.
Because, well, I appreciate that. I guess, because sometimes I get, so are you saying, are you saying that there were Lyrans here before the Lyran and Draco wars? I don't think any, I'm
humanity as the basic humanoid shape is rampant through the galaxy. They're everywhere.
That. I'm talking about
they're everywhere. But okay. there were Homo erectus here, and they were Lyran descent.
Okay.
Before the Anunnaki got here.
Okay. I'll have to do some research on that, Penny. I'm not,
The,
saying that I'm because I took a course with Debbie Solares from. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but I took an Akashic Records reading course, Galactic Akashic Records reading course, and I have a library in my office of different star nations, different starseed types, and our galactic history and so forth. So I'm going to do a little because it's my understanding that initially it started on Lyra. And then when the Draco and Lyran wars, the different Lyrans went to different planetary systems, Orion, Pleiades, Arcturian, so forth, so on. But the humans originated on Lyra before coming to this planet, seeding this planet. So I'll have to look into that. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not looking to be right. I just want to know, you
I've
know,
heard the history of this part of the galaxy from 4 different ET groups,
yeah.
and they don't agree on anything except that humanity as we are was created out of Homo erectus by the addition of ET DNA. They do not even agree on which ET.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. So let's get back to the topic of the Anunnaki. So from your perspective or your personal experience, what is your connection to them, and do you have an ongoing dialogue with these beings? That's the first question.
I had an ongoing dialogue with these beings until they put me in the truth machine. And I have somehow shut off the connection. I consider them very dangerous personally. I do not consider them benevolent. Um, you don't you don't put someone on trial in absentia and not tell them what they're accused of. You don't just pick somebody up out of the middle of nowhere and put them in a cage and start trying to kill them. That's not justice.
Yeah.
Justice would at least be telling me what they were mad at me about.
Well, I would say this: if you're a threat to them in any way, because you have information that could potentially expose some of their agenda and some of the programs that are running on this planet. I mean, I don't consider them safe either, Penny. I'm not saying all Anunnaki are evil. What I am saying is that, well, just like when we're talking about humans, we have ones that are truly in service to others and wanting to be, helpful to help others become aware of information and help them through their process in their own spiritual development and journey. And then you have ones that want to keep all their magic and all their stuff to themselves for their own personal gain. So we know how that goes. So it's like that in the
I,
I'm
I think
Pleiadian, and
I
I know all
think
Pleiadians aren't good or
I
love and
think
light.
that the Ishahami have
Okay.
an agenda. Michael Lee Hill calls them Sams,
Yes.
but they are the ones that are pictured in Sumerian art as a human form. They were much bigger than we are. Um, they are described in 2 different types. One was very light skin, bunny eyes, very light colored hair that's curly,
Hmm.
kinky curly. They describe it as looking like wool. The other also has wool hair, but they're bronze colored. Other than the skin coloring, they seem to be interchangeable.
You just
The,
reminded me in the
the
Bible where
ones
it says,
the
yeah.
ones that I interacted with were the white albino.
Mm,
They were paper white. They were not white like white people.
yeah.
and they mostly had bunny eyes. Some had bright blue, like neon blue. Some had lime green, and some had gold, like gold metal,
Interesting.
not a light brown. They did not
Hmm.
they did not have normal emotional reactions. Instead, they flashed color over their paper white skin. And some of them were a gray color because they overdose on um, sulfur based ormus, and others were a sickly green. Um, and it's from copper based ormus. Ormus is basically powdered gold, and they use it to retain their youth because it seals off the telomeres. But you can't ever separate one from that family. You end up with platinum, gold, copper, or silver as a primary, and the others are in it. And depending on which which contaminant is
It's like a conductor, right? A conductor for the DNA in order.
yeah, it's the actually it's like a cap that keeps it from wearing out.
Okay, right. Okay.
So it's
So that goes to say, so the Anunnaki, like we hear the stories of them wanting to, make us a slave race to mine gold for them, and
yes, that's one
yeah.
of the reasons why they want the gold. Um, so that's why their elites live millions of years and their tall whites live hundreds of years,
Mhm.
is because the tall whites are not given the ormus.
Interesting.
So they're the same species, but that's the whole difference in their lifespan is whether or not they use ormus. And if they use ormus and it's not pure gold, they end up either this, well, it's close to how my sweater's showing up on the camera. It's this blue gray color and they look dead.
Hmm.
And the green color is not an improvement. But if you look into the Hindu faiths, their gods are blue or green
Mm-hmm.
because they're the same people, just different names. And what else do I know about them? I know they have a base in Lake Tanganyika. I know they have a base in underwater at Puerto Rico. I know they have a base in Lake Erie. Uh, that because Michael Lee Hill keeps taking pictures of them coming out of it.
Sure.
Um, Mike likes them.
I've had
Um,
Mike on my show a few times.
Mike really likes them,
Michael, yeah,
and he's not had any bad experiences with them, so he has my blessings.
sure.
Um, he has not cut me off for saying I had bad relationships with them. Now, before they abducted me, they have a technology they call leaning in. And it's basically like a old school photo booth that they go in and they're private and they're sitting on a seat and they're talking into this machine and where they are, they can be on their homeworld. But if they want to talk to me, they'll appear right here beside me.
Mm-hmm.
And for all intents and purposes, they will be there physically. They will actually be there, but they're not. It's a hologram.
Mm-hmm.
And I had years of interactions with Enki, Nengishzida, Mahat, who was known as Ninhursag in
I have some
Sumer.
questions about that. Yeah.
Mahat was the first one that appeared to me. Or actually, I was summoned to Amonti, and I found her trapped in a wall.
Oh my.
And I chiseled her out.
Okay, let me ask you a question, Penny, because you well, one, you mentioned in one of your interviews that the ETs are blocked from coming in our solar system. Would you please elaborate on that? One, and also, you mentioned your bio. You have incarnated as every sentient being in the galaxy. Would you elaborate on that as well? And who? So I just kind of want to keep this focus on Annunaki and your personal experience and perspective. So who would you say Enlil and Enki are? And do you believe they're on the planet? Do you believe that what is their what do you think the different agendas from the brothers, what's playing out on the planet as far as the wars between them and who's going to be, I guess, king of the hill, so to speak?
It's like everybody's fighting over who's going to be king of the hill. Now, the reason that the Shahami are still here is because their homeworld is part of our solar system.
Okay.
They are part of this mess. The solar system, including Nibiru, are inside an ancient Dyson sphere. That's what the Oort cloud is. And it's ancient enough that it's starting to disintegrate. That's why we're getting all these space rocks. Certain times of the orbit around the galaxy, space outside the Oort cloud is really dirty and starts breaking off chunks. But that Oort cloud, Dyson sphere, is why we attract attention. There may be other solar systems out there with them, but I'm not aware of any. But that's why we attract so much attention in the first place, is they're curious about what the hell is that? So my understanding is the planet that is now the asteroid belt was involved in building it. But there have been so many wars and so many billions of years since that nobody knows for sure. Okay, now there is a group at the core of the galaxy. When they speak to me, I hear them telepathically, so I hear it in English. That's important for people to understand. I don't know what they call it, but when they talk to me, they call it the Galactic Authority. Okay. They have decided that Earth humans are a threat to them.
And I've heard you mention that in other interviews, so yes, please elaborate.
Okay, they are pushing all Earth humans from all of our colonies out there back to the solar system. Well, the Germans out there have gotten the farthest because they've been out there the longest. So they're the first to come back, and they're being greeted by ships from the military-industrial complex who are taking refugees, mostly women and children, and turning them into cyborgs for sale to ETs. The sun is a portal.
Yes.
So we're using the sun to come in and out of that Dyson sphere. We're not going through the Dyson sphere. We're going through the sun in the middle. and Gina Hill. I don't know what her middle. I can't remember her middle name.
Gina, yes, I
Gina.
follow her somewhere. Yeah,
Gina has some incredible photographs
I've
of
seen
all
them.
of these
Amazing.
ships coming
Yes.
out of the sun. The ones that are pointy, those are German ships.
Okay, so somebody asked in the questions, what is the connection with the Germans with the Annunaki? So for
None.
okay. So
The
whoever
Germans, to get off Earth, discovered that they had to make a deal with somebody. Okay? The Draco ran a protection racket, so they made sure that they were the somebody. Oh yeah, that's what they do out there. They're not what people think they are. They're not going around stomping people to the ground. No, they run a protection racket. You give them a percentage of your gross planetary product and they make sure you're okay. They protect you from outside invaders. In most cases, it's actually worth the money. They're more like the mafia rather than what people here think they are. But and the mafia are just the remains of the ancient Etruscan government system. That was the way that government operated in the Etruscan Empire.
Okay, can I ask you this? What is the dilemma between Enlil and Enki? What do you think they're what are they battling for? What is the separation for? What's going on with that? Because you have people like Elena Denon, which I didn't even want to mention her name on the show because I don't particularly follow her or care for her content, although I have nothing bad, I will not talk poorly about anybody. I just don't necessarily resonate.
I am not fond of how she came out as one of us after her guest, Stephen Chu, was murdered. That sat wrong with me. She interviewed a man. He was murdered before she got it uploaded, and suddenly she was one of us, and suddenly she had millions of followers, and she speaks in neurolinguistic programming. I'm personally offended by that. Okay. I feel she is stolen valor. And that's what I have against her. And I've never listened to any of her stuff because of it.
Yeah. But she's claiming to be in contact with Enki. And I think that there are a lot of people that are being duped, to be honest.
Enki. Enki is Loki. Do you people understand what Loki is? He's Enki. The good thing was he wanted to give us free will. The good thing was he wanted to teach us how things really operated. The bad thing is he's taught us all our bad habits, and he lies to us as much as the rest of them do.
Enki, Loki, you're claiming that's Loki, Enki?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to look into that a little bit.
I'm claiming he's Loki. What you've got is Enki was given Earth and told to mine gold. He went through, and he's a geneticist, he's not a miner. And he went through and he started creating all of these great, nifty things that he was really happy about. And his dad back home started getting anxious because Enlil wanted the throne. And so he sent, these guys had different mothers. Mm-hmm. Enki is actually older. Mm-hmm. He should be the crown prince, the mm-hmm. king. Right. His son was promised to be king and was denied it because Enki didn't provide enough gold. And Enlil was getting antsy wanting the throne, and Daddy Anu said, why don't you go take over your brother's stuff because he's not producing enough stuff. And Enlil was a bean counter. and pushed everybody to do more. To the point they rebelled, and then Enki says, "Oh, I can make I can make a Lulu. I can make a primitive slave to do all the work." And that even then was considered illegal, immoral, unethical. But they did it anyway. And they've been at each other ever since. Now, whichever one had a baby with their sister, or I should say a baby boy with their sister, would end up king. Their sister had daughters with both of them. She was told she couldn't ever marry because she had had sex with both her brothers.
Where are you getting these? So where's this story coming from?
Part of it is from the Book of Enoch. Part of it's from Sitchin. Part of it's from um, the one that died. Can't think of his name. He was in Decoders of Truth with me.
Okay. So some of what you've shared, I'm familiar, but I haven't heard in detail like what you said. I do know that
it goes through different religions. If you're paying attention to all of the religions, they're telling the same story from different viewpoints.
Sure. But I just wanted to say something you had mentioned. I do. So I am Arabic Palestinian. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I am bloodline from both sides. I've shared that with you. We've engaged
Mm-hmm.
in, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
I do know that it's
much more bloodline than people think.
Right. It's part of our culture, part of our, to the oldest son is always the inheritor of the land and whatever possessions, so forth. And because Enki was the oldest son, but his mother was Pleiadian, she was not Draco, where Enlil's mother was both mother and father were both Draco.
Enlil's father and mother were both Jahami.
A type of Draco?
No,
Or
they're another species. Completely. They look human.
I've never heard that before, so I'm not saying I'd have to look into that. I mean, we know that the God of the Bible is a Draco reptilian. I mean, most people that are in this arena, this community, those that have done their work and study know that the Anu, which means king, is a Draco. He had two sons, Enlil and Enki.
The storyline that I was told was that he was Syrian from Sirius. That he was.
I'm gonna have to do some more reading because I don't know enough to really. I mean, I know what I know, but I could be,
This is the first time hearing that they're Draco.
Yeah, they're Annunaki, Draco. I mean, that's
the version that I was told, and goes through most of the literature, is that the Shahami were from Sirius and that they settled on Nibiru and that they were a vassal state of the Draco Empire and that Anu was out of line. And so he was sent a Draco princess to control him, and she was Enki's mother. That Enlil was the child of his Syrian wife. So the Syrian population wanted a purebred rather than a half-breed. And that was the source of the issue between Enki and Enlil.
So you're saying that Enki's mother was not Pleiadian? Is that what you're saying?
Over half of the literature says nothing about Pleiadians.
Well, I know Dan Winters mentions that Enki's mother was Pleiadian, and that's why he was not full-blooded Draco. Therefore, he was not, because of his.
Well, I know that Enki is often drawn as having the torso of a man and two snakes as legs, and this would be consistent with him being half Draco
Yeah.
or full Naga.
Mm.
And so he had to have gotten that somewhere, that Enki is presented as half reptile, where Enlil is presented as a human form.
I'm gonna have to look into this some more,
Because
I've had this idea in my mind for a very long time, and the last thing I want to do is, well, I only share from my understanding until I only know what I know till I know something else, and
well,
I'm always open
you
to
can look
being.
at the art from Sumer and the ancient Mesopotamians, and
Well, I
they
mean, I think that
show.
the artifacts aren't always I think that sometimes they're depicted in the way that they are, not necessarily that he had two snakes coming out of his legs, but that he was part something and part
Well,
possibly
you know,
reptilian.
if you look at Melusina, they draw her the same way.
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
So she was a water spirit in Luxembourg.
Well, I think Michael Lee Hill, I mean, he and I have done shows together, and he is aware that Enki's mother was Pleiadian. He's
Well,
aware.
he was the first one I heard say it. So yeah,
Yeah,
he
yeah,
does.
yeah. And her name was Aida, by the way, which is kind of fascinating considering some of the. I don't share everything that I am aware of because I don't need to, but I do know that. Yeah, it's a pretty fascinating story, and it's all of humanity's story, right? We all, yeah, and
the Sumerian tablets make it really clear that Enki's sperm was the only one that worked with the Homo erectus females. It was the only one that would work.
Okay.
So he was different from the others. Right. Whatever they were, he was different.
Well, I think this is just my perspective, and again, I need to take my doing some reading more seriously, because I used to dive into all this a lot more years ago. Of course, I've had to step back from all of it for a while because I needed to work through my own trauma and healing, and I've actually recently decided to start somatic trauma therapy because I think it will be helpful, because I have some rage and anger inside me. It only comes out during full moons, but I don't want anybody around me, because this last one, I just was really had a tough time. I mean, I usually stay to myself when I go through that, but yeah.
I've been just sort of, I had made a decision I wasn't going to do my show anymore. And then it was because after the group I usually interview went to Montauk and they resolved a lot of their problems, they no longer felt the need to speak. And I was having trouble getting guests. And I thought, okay, I can spend that time writing. And so as soon as I actually made the decision to let it go, suddenly I had a full schedule again.
Well, yeah, Penny, what about, okay, so I appreciate what you just said. You said that they went to Montauk and came out and felt that they had done some healing and was able to release some things. I think it's important. So I do want to say this, and for those that are listening, when we, and including myself, when we continue to relive the story that we put ourselves through, that it can be, I wouldn't say re-traumatizing ourselves, but it keeps us in a loop of being stuck in that, not, okay, if you want to use the word stuck, I don't know what other word to use, but just, encased in this kind of consciousness that we're not expanding from, because we're so focused in on saying the same story over and over and over again. There's really not allowing anything, possibly a new perspective. I remember somebody saying to me, you can't change your past, but you can change your perspective of it. And depending on how we're looking at things, whether we want to say, okay, well, you know what? Yeah, I went through a lot of tough things, but I've learned to, process that trauma and come out the other end you're still a very loving and kind person. So am I. We're not walking around angry and hating the world. That's a blessing, considering that some of the stuff that those of us that were using these projects and programs, that we're still able to have love and empathy in our hearts, right?
Well, the problem that I've had is I get a lot of new people who haven't done their homework, don't know what I talk about, and we end up starting my story in chronological order, and we get stuck with Langley. And I never get past that talking to people. And so it's like I'm talking about Langley 20 million times and never tell the rest. And at least you wanted to talk about something different. But
I think, because I've seen many of your posts and your comments about Annunaki and your experiences, and I know that there was something else I wanted to ask you, because I believe so. The Sakar, right? You mentioned in your
the Siakar. That's what I am as a soul.
Right. So can you tell us what a Siakar is? And
it's a dragon.
I'd love to know. Yeah. I'm sorry?
It's a dragon. The dragons were the first sentient species in this galaxy. Nice. They're that old.
Yeah.
And my higher self is actually a child of that species. And she has been at my level incarnating as other life forms to understand them. They hatch at about 40 feet long, and they look like a Western dragon. And as they get older, their body lengthens and their feet get shorter. So in middle age, they look like Asian dragons, that fly. And by old age, their feet and hands almost completely disappear and they become flying snakes. And they live millions of years. They do not live in 3D. They live in 12D. And I was quite offended when Helena Denon conflated them with every other reptilian group in the universe, because they're not. The Bible refers to them as seraphim.
Okay. I'm familiar with seraphim, but I've never heard of Siakar.
Siakar.
I've never.
That's what they call
them. I have heard it. I don't. It does sound familiar, but I don't remember much. Yeah.
Now, there are times when people who have second sight will look at me and they will see my dragon self instead of me. I'm not shape-shifting. They are seeing another layer.
Right.
And for those who can, I'm a red dragon, approximately the equivalent of about 6 years old.
Oh, Penny, you're a cute little dragon lady. I love it. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That's where my core.
I love that.
That is where my core consciousness resides. There are times that this body is simply too small for it. And when I go to conferences, especially if I'm stressed out, people will feel that auric field get huge and powerful, and they're like, But I'm not threatening anybody. I'm just nervous.
Yeah. I think you're awesome, Penny.
Thank you.
And I mean that. And I
I
adore you. And I
try.
think that I hold so much mm,
I had a
admiration and
gentleman.
appreciation for you because I think that you have brought a lot to this community or to the I don't even like using the word super soldier. I don't think there's anything super about it. I think we went through a lot of trauma, and those of us that were augmented to be used in these projects and programs that we've done things that we're not proud of, and I think healing needs to take place. I think
When
we would get along if more people were willing to do, and I'm not saying nobody has done this. I'm just saying on a whole, where shadow work and connecting and really
God,
honoring one another. It's
every
needed.
time every time I reintegrate a new altar, I have to do shadow work for months
Yeah,
because they have done things that I would not have.
sure.
When I joined this community in what about 2014, we were having real problems with Omega programming.
Can you tell people what the mega programming is? Because
Omega programming is where you have a self destruct program, and it's usually activated by remembering missions and what you were used for.
okay,
So, the more progress people would make towards remembering what happened to them, they would get slapped with this self destruct. And it was to protect the perps.
mm,
And we had people literally killing their spouse, killing their families, killing their therapist, anybody that they could reach. So we started this group, and we had 12 admins, and one of them was a therapist. And we were basically treating it like group therapy. And every month we had to, at least one admin go absolutely batshit. Every month, regular as clockwork. If we started into a second month and there wasn't anybody going crazy, I was sitting there anxious, wondering who it was going to be.
mm,
And our core thing was accept that you did this and fight the Omega. You don't have to kill your family. You don't have to kill your spouse. And through the years, we found out that all of us seem to go through a stage where we think our partner is a handler, because as we start remembering, we start withdrawing and we start getting a little antsy,
sure.
and it scares our partner. So they want to pull us out of this community because they see the community as the problem. They don't understand that it's the memories that are the problem. And the more they try to pull you out, the more you see them as a handler. I've had people tell me, "Oh, my partner's a handler. I have to kill them." No, you don't.
That's
They're not a
I've
handler.
never thought about killing anybody, and
This,
I've
this is a regularly scheduled problem. As soon
yeah,
as you reach the point where your memories are uncomfortable for your partner, this starts.
yeah,
And it happens regular as clockwork. And a lot of what I do with people is I just tell them, calm down. Don't hate your partner. They just want the you back that they used to have. That's all.
sure.
And if
So,
they can't
yeah,
have that, then they may leave, but you don't need to kill them.
yeah, right. Well, hopefully nobody's running around killing anybody. I mean, that's, we do know
We did have we,
Manchurian candidate. We know that suicidal programs. I mean, I
we did have
went
problems
through
with
that.
that.
Yeah,
That was the biggest thing up until 2015 or so, was this community. They were killing their spouse, killing their kids, and then killing themselves. We
I'm
had
not aware of
we
any of them, but I don't
we
know.
had lots of that.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, it was me and Ileana the Star Traveler, and she hates me now, but I'm going to name her anyway. Morgan Starr.
Mm.
The three of us together changed that.
Well, Ileana, I'm going to be talking to soon, and I'm super excited to talk with her. I think her work is amazing, and I look forward to it. I still got a little bit before I get to talk with her, but I will be soon. And by the way, I did
You'll
tell
have
you
fun with
that,
her.
yeah, I spoke with the lady, Miss, what was her name? Miss, I forget her name, Penny. The one that you recommended, that you were kind enough to give me her contact information. And I told you she called me and gave me some information.
I remember, but I'm blanking on her
Miss
name too.
Doris or
Oh,
Dorothy. Yeah, yeah.
Doris Neely.
Yeah,
She's a
she told me that that the Pleiadians had contacted me while I was in my mother's womb and some other things, but I'm not surprised. I remember being in my mother's womb and not wanting to be born. I remember looking through her belly and seeing the light shining through the water, and I turned back over and I was snapped out of it and woke up.
I didn't want to be born, but I had had a twin sister that had been killed by the process of changing DNA.
Yeah.
So
Okay. So,
I even before I was born, I knew this world was a scary place.
yeah. Well, so I usually run my shows about an hour and a half, but I've enjoyed talking with you. And I
Thank
would
you.
love to have you come back,
Okay.
and maybe we can do a show on some tools, and because I really want to keep this show, this podcast, focus on solutions and building community rather than us, you know, I've never really fought with anybody in the community. I don't get involved in drama. I'm not, I
Yeah,
just don't.
I get that.
Yeah. But I would love to have you come back on and be able to share some of the tools and things that you do to
Okay.
help others. If you would consider doing that, we can plan maybe for another month or two out and have you come
Okay.
on. Maybe Ileana will come on with us and we could have have a great
We, we
discussion.
we've done shows together before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've watched them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what got me more interested in her work and stuff, was watching a show you did with her.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to
She
her.
and I she said that when she first started talking, that nobody believed her that there was a cyborg base on Mars, but that I talked about it too. So I was sort of verifying her.
Mhm. Yeah.
And later on, she was doing work recovering memories, and she remembered my altar there, coming to her factory and
Wow.
interacting with me. So
Yeah.
um, I've been on Mars in several altars. The first one that was split off, the one that went to Schule there, is usually the one I talk about, because the great public thinks that you only went once. They don't understand that I have been used thousands of times in different places. That's I was taken 90 times from November 5th to the middle of December in 2019. I was taken 90 times, and those were 60 and backs. Those altars are still out there and will be long after I'm dead. So I'm in my
I just
I'm in
recently
my
started hearing
60s.
about this 60 and back. I know that it was brought, I was made aware that I was using 220 and backs, but the 60 and back thing is a new thing to me.
Okay.
Like,
The
yeah.
Germans use people with ET genetics in 60 and backs in your natural body.
Mm.
The Americans put your consciousness grid into a clone. Well, clones are not soulless or mindless. They're just grown so fast they haven't had time to grow their own mind. And when they get to about 25 years, they kick you out because you're possessing them. And so instead of keeping you till you're kicked out, they keep you 20 years so they know it's you the whole time. And then they kill the clone.
I would love to have a discussion around that sometime because I,
People people use the word soulless like it's nothing, but it's a really big deal.
sure, especially if your consciousness is being used to
Yeah.
run these bodies. So, I mean, I know that I have AI that runs through my body. I can see, well, in particular in my eye, that's connected to my my third eye and into
Mhm.
my brain, and I can feel. I remember when I was fully activated for my mission. I've had several missions, but the big mission that I was prepared my whole life probably for. I mean, I would have buzzing in my palms. And if I was around any kind of, like, I went to a basketball game with my niece, and we were sitting watching the game, and they start playing drumming at the end, and it activated my, I guess,
Oh,
implant, or I don't, it was like I could
I
feel the
haven't
buzzing.
I haven't had the implants here,
Yeah.
but I've had them in the clone altars.
Well, if they were implants or possibly chakra, I mean, we think of seven chakras. We have octaves, different energy
Mm.
points throughout the body. So, but yeah, so I want to wrap this up. Penny,
Mm.
I appreciate. Go ahead.
Do
Yes,
we
ma'am.
have any questions before I go?
Yes. So the only question that I saw was who the Anunnaki were, the Anunnaki, how the Anunnaki were connected to the Dracos, and you said they weren't. So that question,
They're a subject race
yeah,
because
here it is. This is the question: how are the Anunnaki connected to the Nazis of Germany, World War II? That's the
they're not.
question. Okay,
They're
yeah,
not. And the Germans out in space are not Nazis. They're Germans.
okay,
That's they still wear German uniforms. So Americans who don't go deep into their memories
hmm
remember the German uniforms and assume they're Nazis. They don't ever look deep enough to know what they really are.
I think most people, even myself, until you're just now saying this, all automatically assume that if they're Nazis, that means they're German, or German, they're Nazis. Like it's you.
Nazi was a political group that
Mm,
lasted approximately 20 years in Germany on Earth.
yeah,
And they burned through their time. They created hell on earth for the people in their country and everyone around them. And anyone who thinks they were good guys is delusional.
I think I would say that would be true for a lot of. I mean, look at what China does. Look at what in Russia. Look at,
Mhm.
I mean, it's all, look at Palestine right now. I don't even want to get into that. Okay, at all.
I had a Jewish grandmother, and all I can say is never again should apply to us being the perps, too.
Say that again. Never what?
Never again which is what came out of Nazi Germany's Holocaust,
Mm.
should apply to us being the perps too.
Right.
Or as the saying is going now, not in my name.
It's
I
so
never I never saw a genocide I approved of.
yeah. Well, I posted something, and I'm gonna end it on this. And of course, if you have a response, no problem. But if anybody does their real history, do their real research, they'll find that the Palestinians are the true Hebrews, Penny.
I know that.
That's a fact. And it is genocide I would say, genocide's not even is an understatement. What's happening is it's heartbreaking.
It's
And it's not because I'm Palestinian.
It's a complete
because I'm human.
extermination of a people that didn't deserve it.
That's right. And I wouldn't want that for the Jews. I wouldn't want that for the Spanish. I wouldn't want that for any human being. I don't care what religious you believe in. I don't care what. So it's very sad. And
I have this rage about it, and I can't talk about it because they're going to start rounding people up and put us in education camps. That's what Mrs. Clinton has said. So
I don't fear Mrs. Clinton. I don't fear the Dracos. I don't fear any of their nonsense. I don't consent to it. I claim my divine beingness, and even the word sovereignty over my own dominion and my body, my heart, my mind. I don't buy into any of that, and I don't fear death. I've crossed over and come back. I don't fear it. Yes. So
I've been dead and sent back so many times, I'm not even sure I'm actually alive.
Right. So you're still, no, you're alive. You're here and you're doing amazing. And so am I. And we're not going to claim any of that nonsense. And we're going to continue you're doing great, Penny. And I appreciate you coming on my show, Cosmic Crew Podcast. Everybody subscribe, share, like, send it out. We're going to have Penny back in probably a month or two when she's ready, and we're going to discuss some solutions and things that people that are newly awakening to possibly being used in the projects and programs, or having any memory or questioning what's going on the planet, or how we want to support you in your spiritual development. And I do appreciate what you said about the DNA of the Dracos and having more psychic what's the word, not psychic, but there was a word you used. I remember I watched one of your shows, psionic abilities.
Psionic is the term that they use at the Pentagon.
Yeah. So I appreciate that. And I would love, I could talk to you for hours. So I know we kind of were, we didn't say too much focus on the Annunaki, but I think there was enough information given for people to at least maybe go and do your own research, read the books.
I did give you a link to
I added it.
Book collection on my Google Drive, and that's set up that anybody that has the link can download them. Now, I have to pay for that Google Drive, so sooner rather than later is a good idea.
Okay. So everybody, if you go into the comment section, number one, you'll see all of the ways if you want to share you have your YouTube show, all the links to contact Penny or to see her work, and watch her interviews, interview people that have interviewed her and guests that she has on her Nacht Waffen pilot YouTube channel. There's a lot of fun information, fascinating information that you can check out. Also, if you look in the description on the event page, all her links are there. And I added the document that Penny is mentioning now, where I opened it and there is a plethora of information on the Annunaki. So have fun, dive into it. I definitely am going to, because I want to, see what's in there. It'd be fun to learn some more. So thank you for your work, Penny. Thank you for coming on the show. I
Thanks
appreciate
for having
you. I will be in touch. Yes, we will. Yeah, we'll continue to, connect on Facebook and maybe do another show in the next month or two. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Penny. You have a fantastic night. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. Share this out, like it, and we'll see you on the next show.